What's up, team? Sean from Invest to Live here. And today we're going to take a little bit of a different angle. For those who don't know, I work full-time in the analytics, data science, machine learning space. So when I look at a company like Palantir and others as well, this same conversation could apply to C3 or anyone else in this space. I really look at and try to understand the scale of the technology, the scale of the TAM, the challenges that we're facing and solving for. And I thought it'd be an interesting take here to talk through what this looks like, some of the top challenges, and then provide my perspective on the moat that Palantir has, because I think as I'm looking at where things are today, some of the challenges in the markets, the pricing of the stock, who cares? We're looking long-term, we're thinking big picture. How is the market changing? How does the market have to change? And who's going to be left behind in this process? So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. And as always, please appreciate the like and a subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us out on this channel. And I don't monetize this channel right now, so I'm not looking at trying to make $2 or $3 a day with this thing, right? I just happen to enjoy talking about this, and I don't normally get a chance to talk about data science and analytics, so I'm going to do that today. So I want to hit you with a couple of quick metrics here. So data-driven organizations in general, when it comes to their customers and the ability to execute, are 23 times more likely to add customers when they leverage a data analytics strategy, 6.5 times more likely to retain customers, and 15 times more likely to deliver value to those clients. Those are big numbers. And the reason why is when we think about AI, too many times the way that the average investor or someone who doesn't work in this space thinks about it is AI is something that sits on my phone and I ask it to look up something online for me. That's a form of AI, right? But that's a point of. It's a point of service, a point of contact, a point of X. What we're talking about is really a platform approach to understanding data at scale. And for those who don't know this, data is a massive problem right now for many organizations. Data's never clean. It's very hard to understand. The scale of data is not only changing every single second, but the directionality and the understanding of that data, the way it connects, touches, and interacts with other data points is a key driver to why you need a true platform-based solution to do data science at scale. However, it also has to deliver insights that are usable and contextual. And I'm going to talk more about this as well. This is not a normal conversation about a stock. So if you really want to, if you're investing in these companies, you want to learn about what it is and why they do it, this is the right video to be watching. So when you get behind the steering wheel of your car and you turn the key, your dashboard lights up, right? This has been happening for many, many decades. That's a standard experience of business intelligence, right? I have some diagnostic reporting. Is there a check engine light on? Am I low on fuel or oil? How fast am I going in that moment, right? I also have descriptive, right? That dashboard is showing me a descriptive view of all these different metrics, different data points, and sort of aggregating them in an easy to consume format. And you say to yourself, well, it's great. I can see right now at a moment in time how I'm doing, how much gas I have, how fast I'm going, if there's a light on, if there's a low tire warning, right? That's sort of getting into the prioritization effect of analytics, right? We're not saying when you have to fill the tire. We're not telling you what's going to happen if you don't fill that tire or fill your gas tank or change the oil, simply letting you know, hey, it looks like it's time to do these things because of a sensor telling us this in real time, right? Now, let's think about GPS for a second. GPS sits over to the right-hand side, and that GPS provides an experience. It's contextual, and it's based on how you're using your vehicle in that moment. I don't just want a GPS to tell me how many miles it's going to take to get to the destination, right? That's very descriptive or diagnostic. I don't need to know how many turns and how many feet or miles between those turns. What I want is a system to tell me, based on what we know, collecting data in real time, here are the likely challenges, best routes, options you can take on your journey so that you hit your endpoint. That endpoint could be more sales, customer retention, net revenue retention. It could be solving for a missile defense system, making sure that medication reaches its destination in real time, ensuring trains don't crash or planes don't hit each other on a runway. In terms of that GPS, that intelligent experience we're thinking about, what we want to talk to at scale is how do we drive a contextual approach to analytics and data so that the end users don't have to be data scientists to get value from it. And on the back end, it's so heavy and so thick that we don't care how much data or where that data comes from. So I want to take a quick second here, and these are just sort of some things I've aggregated over the years that are sort of like key issues from the standpoint of what the main challenges are in the data science space. Excuse me. So number one, if you're not familiar with this, the real value of AI is not looking at a singular system. Understanding transactional data or financial data from a cash register or 10,000 of them for that matter That's great. We can see how many times per hour they ring something in. Is it cash? Is it credit? We can see the average dollar amounts, the highs and the lows, right? But what happens when we start to apply it with marketing materials? Do customers have cases open? Are we looking at IoT data coming in real time? Do we have feeds from an assembly line? Are we looking at customer service calls in real time and applying that back to this, right? Our goal is to be able to take as much possible data as possible and let the system help us to understand and aggregate what it is that we're trying to pull out, right? So what makes this unique is we're not looking at this to understand that dashboard of what's happening right now. I want to take a step back and be able to ask questions. I want to be able to say, what is the likelihood of this happening? Or how do I get that to happen? Or I see that this is what's likely to happen, so what comes next? In the terms of this conversation, what we're really talking about is the jump from being predictive. So think predictive software based on these past events. This is what we're predicting is likely to happen. And we want to apply this with prescriptive natural language model as an example, where we want to say, based on what's likely to happen, because of these indicators or signals, and it could be a primary, a secondary, or tertiary. I'll explain this in a second. And then I want to know, well, what can I do to change the outcome, and what will the impact of those actions have on the outcome? I really want to get deep on this in a second, but not too deep. So when we think about interactions, I want to give you a really easy use case here. Let's say every day I go to the store and I buy an orange balloon. 365 days a week, I buy an orange balloon. You put that data into an analytics system that's not intelligent or just looks at historical or diagnostic data, and it's going to say, Sean is very likely to buy an orange balloon, keep selling him orange balloons. But orange balloons may not be a high margin product. It may not be a product that you plan on keeping on the shelf much longer, right? Maybe you want me to get into the blue balloons or the red balloons, but for now, the data is telling you, hey, keep selling me an orange balloon. We have nothing else to try. The marketing is not working. That's what he buys every day. Now, if they have more data about me and they know that online I'm looking up blue balloons every day, I actually wish I could buy a blue balloon, but I never thought I could have one, or I thought they were too expensive, or I thought there was some other challenge to me getting it, or I'm not aware that it's even available for me. And so if they took that historical purchasing data and combined it with that secondary data point of that intent or signal data, maybe it means they can change up a pathway to get me into doing something different. When I come into the store, maybe they proactively let me know there's a sale on blue balloons, or maybe I get an email or a Facebook post or something on YouTube, an ad telling me that blue balloons are great for people like me, and here's why. Now, the key here is we need to be able to look at that data and understand what it means. And I want to explain a little bit more about this in a second. When we think about the ability for something to happen, the ability to have an impact on the output, right? I'm likely to buy a blue balloon, or I'm not likely to buy a blue balloon. But in a business sense, we're thinking about it in terms of this customer is definitely going to churn or attrit versus this customer who is almost definitely going to be staying on purchasing more software, right? So I want you to think about this in terms of two buckets: leaving, staying as a customer, right? This is really important for businesses who are looking at churn, attrition rates, customer acquisition costs, looking at net revenue retention, and internal growth. Now, the reason we do this is when we think about this model in this realm of data science, what I'm first trying to do is go out and look at the ecosystem of all of my data, all of my customer interactions, all the ways they've bought or traded over the years. And we can start to see that we have a high degree of variable correlation, right? Which variables are really impactful to determining likely to stay or more likely to go. And to make this really simple, think about it on a scale of 0 to 100. 100 means they are definitely staying as customers. 0 means they're definitely not staying as customers. So as that machine learning model is looking out across the data, what it's going to start to determine is, in one hand, we've got customers that look just like this. They never stay as customers. 0% chance that we're retaining that customer. And on the flip side, we've got that 100%. Now, within those variables, to be clear, it could be everything. It could be from the size of the account, the maturity of the account, how they buy, where they buy, do they use a cell phone or a laptop? Do they eat twice a day in this restaurant or once a day, right? It doesn't matter what the output is. We're simply trying to determine, from a data science perspective, with as much data as possible, and I'm getting to my point on Palantir in a second. These customers never do it this way. These customers always will stay as customers. And it's important because our efforts then need to be tied to making sure we focus on upsell and cross-sell on those customers who stay. And we want to try to find out a new way to get those customers back on board. Or if we just think there's no way they're going to be a good fit, it's a bad TAM for us, then let's make sure we're not marketing customers who look like those customers, or let's take a lower cost approach to it, right? The whole thing here is, how do we use data in a way We're constantly trying to perceive what's around the corner and contextually what to do about it based on the outcomes we're trying to provide. So in this case, when I think about that spectrum of 0 to 100, what I'm now looking to do is sort of an attribution-based analysis of all of the potential customers that are out there, whether they're currently on my platform, perhaps in this case, or the prospects that I'm trying to go after. Now, what I want to understand is, as I look and gather as much information about those customers, I now want to understand where on that spectrum of 0 to 100 do they fall. Maybe they show 40 out of 100, right? So it's likely we could get them to be a customer or stay as a customer, but we got to figure out what's not working and why, and proactively take steps to do that. Now, let's say we have a customer at a 90, almost definitely staying on board, loves the product, great data we're seeing about this customer. This is a good opportunity to figure out how they're using our products, what else we can position in real time, and the benefits to them in doing so, right? So the approach here, I'm taking it from a sales perspective, but the approach is really, how do we start to diagnostically understand what has happened, descriptively understand what's happening today, predictively look at what the outcome is likely to be, and prescriptively deliver this back as to what we should do to change the outcome or improve it towards what our goals are. Now, what's unique about AI in this approach is we can kick off lots of automated things, right? We want to create processes and automation off of this. When we identify customers at risk, maybe we kick off a customer service campaign. We I don't want to speak too much about like the military defense use cases because it can get a little bit more complex, but as an example, we're looking for warning signals or warning signs across lots of metadata all over the world, and we're trying to pinpoint where we're getting blips of risk or blips of things to be notified about. So we need to have the ability not just to ask questions, but also look for anomalies in real time. And this is kind of the key here, is we want to automate as much of this as possible. Now, what's really interesting, I think, in the future of this approach to looking at data science is as we apply more natural language processing and natural language outputs and querying, this is really interesting stuff too, because as we go back to this idea of all the multiple data sources and the challenges that are created with it, excuse me, we need to be able to take all that different language, all that different approach to how we describe what's in that data, have the ability to either have it standardized or leverage AI at scale to help standardize it into a usable format. Okay, so this all goes back to that original point of multiple data sources. Now, let's just touch on a few others real quick before I sort of jump over into Palantir and why, as a company, I think that although it's easy to get caught up in the stock price and the stock movement and market cap, we're talking about a company right now as a long-term investment and player, not as a stock price today. So a couple of the big challenges we see in data science is data security, right? How do we make sure that people don't see more than they should? So when we're delivering it to our end users to do something with it, we want to make sure that we have the ability to set up data governance, which means we know who's looking at what and how they access it. We want to have the ability to shut down access to certain data points. Perhaps I just need to see a visual of what's happening, but I don't want to go deep into the data. So it's important to have solutions that have all of that built in as well. The biggest challenge, in my opinion, I think there's going to be some people who might watch this and say, well, I disagree, and I would love to debate it. I think one of the biggest issues most businesses have is they know or they believe the time is now to move into machine learning, to move into AI, to move into automated processes based on data or being more data focused, right? I oftentimes like to think about this as how do we make it more, make your company's data more operational? How do we digest it in better ways? How do we deliver it to your teams in executable formats? But the problem is it's a big idea, right? It's like I put a white board in front of you and say, okay, go. And you say, well, go what? I don't just do something on it. And you're like, well, where do I begin? I have no idea. So I think the biggest issue we see is that there's a general sense of not having deep clarity or understanding of what to even use this type of software technology for. So that's why a lot of times I like to start from the standpoint of sales, customer service, and marketing, because it's very palatable. And then we can go very deep into like large scale data processing at scale, modeling out potentials, and all the cool stuff that we can talk about another time. But the easiest way I like to think about it is, what are the things that you should be doing differently in your business, right? As an example, because we know Palantir is really moving for that commercial play. So I think about this in my day-to-day, and a big part of what we focus on is getting to the root of questions, right? Well, we want to increase revenue. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we need to identify customers who are likely to churn. Okay, well, how do we resolve for that? Okay, if they're not going to churn and we've turned them over, how do we now target new white space across sell, upsell products with it? Okay, next level, which products do we cross-sell? Well, based on the usability, this is a good fit. Why is it a good fit? Explain it in a natural language term. So by the time it actually gets to someone who can execute, they know why they're doing it, how to do it, and with what messaging to do it on, right? So this is where it needs to be very actionable and very operational. Excuse me. Another big one, and this is one that's like a thorn in my side, actually, to be totally honest, is we have what's called undefined KPIs and metrics. KPIs are key performance indicators. Think like, net retention, net revenue retention, monthly recurring revenue. It could be everything from pipeline to marketing campaigns, et cetera, right? So we're looking at like things like the metrics we're tracking, sales, phone calls, anything, right? KPIs and metrics are a pretty simple and common thing in business. But what we find is a lot of folks who want to go on this AI journey don't know what to do differently. So what ends up happening is people will say things like, well, I've got this Excel sheet and I've got all my visuals built out on it. And how do I get that into this? It's like, nope, definitely the wrong way to think about it. What we want to do is not replace an Excel report or even a report you have built in business intelligence today. The key is to understand its scale. What can we do differently? What could we ask that report to tell us? How do we look at where those data sources that are feeding into that report are coming from and leverage some sort of like a transformative approach to that data and start to apply questions to it? This is where you get to have some fun, right? You can look at automatic missing values. You can look at time series forecasting built in. You can look at sentiment analysis of surveys and customer comments, right? So now you have a much better and deeper 360 of the data you're looking at for KPIs and metrics. Like, it's not enough to say, hey, we're 80% of the way to our quota. Okay, well, what are the chances you hit the 20%? How much pipeline will you need to hit that 20%? What's your conversion rate and why, and how do we improve that conversion rate, right? You got to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, but it doesn't work if you don't have the data. Keep that in mind, because that's what I'm getting to here. The other piece, of course, this is a major, major problem that has to be addressed. And again, I'll talk about it, is there's a huge difficulty in finding, keyword here, skilled data scientists. There are a lot of data scientists. There's a lot more people graduating every day. But the reality is, to be skilled at this and have the contextual understanding of how to do it, think about it, and deliver it requires more than just knowing the math. You have to have both the sense of why it matters to executive leadership teams, defense teams, whatever, right? Also how to deliver it, how to think about it, how to deploy it in a way where it's contextually used and adding value. That's a lot. Palantir has been around for a long time. They have an incredibly strong management team with good leadership. They have the right people working over there from everything I've seen. I know people who I know a lot of people who work in this space. That is not a challenge that I've ever heard that they're facing. And the final point, I think I've touched on this a few times, really, is just getting value out of your spend, or really looking at both in perspective, an ROI on what you spend, and getting the mind shift away from TCO, or total cost of ownership. Traditionally, when we look at things like an analytics tool or a business intelligence tool, the issue is we're always trying to understand, well, what's the total cost of ownership, right? To buy it, to renew it, to train my people on it, et cetera. The big thing with operational AI and machine learning is I want people to stop thinking, and I'm talking about investors right now, stop thinking about how much it costs to buy an AI platform and what they're going to make for margin on it. Start thinking in terms of what's the return on the businesses that they're selling it to. If they can increase sales by 6x over the next 5 years, what kind of a number is that, right? What kind of value is that bringing to the business? Now start thinking about pricing power that they can have when they can deliver those kind of results at scale, and the fact they've been around for a long time. So let's shift gears here for a second and start talking about why I tend to be very bullish here, not on a stock price perspective, on a company perspective. Number one, we already know some good things from other videos, right? Palantir has great cash flow. They're sitting on piles of cash and gold. Sure, that's great. We know that hiring is not a problem because it's a high-flying company. A lot of people want to work there. Sure, that's great. The missing key to why so many startups in this space go nowhere or ultimately just get bought to acquire their employees, again, the lack of skilled data scientists, is you need to have massive amounts of data, both historical and incoming, to help the models learn and become more statistically relevant. And I want to touch on this for a second as well. If we're trying to predict the likelihood of somebody having a heart attack in the next 5 minutes, there's no room for error, right? We need to have an instantaneous way to recognize if the heart's going to go or not right now. With data science, the approach to commercial and federal and defense work, oftentimes the way we think about this is in terms of statistical relevancy. So this is particularly important because I need to increase my likelihood of statistical relevance and accuracy so I can gain advantage in my process of going to market, right? Both for them as a company and both for the companies they do business with. If you can show me how to increase customer spend, by 2, 3, or 4 points, that can be millions, tens of millions, or hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on who you're selling it to. And with every point of statistical relevancy you increase it, that gets even wider. So they need to have all that historical data so that when they build out their profiles, their models, their customer 360s, their views of the business, their views of the data, financials, operationals, everything, right? The more we get, the more refined that model can keep learning. And what happens is you start to get this feedback loop with almost a flywheel where data is continuously coming in and it's learning. It's coming in, it's learning. It's coming in, it's learning. It's just going to keep going, going, going. With more and more data over time, we start to see what data is now not important or statistically relevant, and more new and more statistically relevant information comes in, right? The signal data changes. The noise gets louder, but we can pinpoint the key pieces of it. So with all of that said, this is a big challenge for lots of companies in this space. It sounds like it would be an easy thing for you and I to go and start up an AI company, right? I know the business. I can definitely get the algorithms in place pretty quickly. And let me tell you something, contrary to what a lot of people believe, a majority of this is really using the same models. It's the platform and the delivery system of it and how it gets pushed back out to that consumer to be used within their enterprise selling model. And again, I'm focusing on commercial customers. Getting a lot of data that's real, live, and based on actual things that are happening in real time is a huge moat for a company like a Palantir. And they're not the only one, by the way, just to be clear, but we're talking about them today. The ability to have them already working at scale with government contracts, that real-time IoT data, that real-time feed from different types of sources, lots of things we can't even talk about. But like from that federal perspective, that defense perspective, you're getting boatloads and mountains of data that helps the model continuously refine itself, continuously learn upon itself. And the key here is to think about the different steps of process of what you have to build to be a successful commercial enterprise in this space. You need to be able to process the information at scale, drive insights at scale and quickly, and then deliver to those endpoints at scale and quickly. So you have to have a platform that's stacked. You have to the ability to connect to all data sources, think open APIs, direct connections, syncs and queries, etc. But it all has to be pulled together and then in a way that someone can actually do something with it. There's lots of smart people who can pull together an idea and write a model. There's lots of smart people who can sell anything, but maybe don't have the background or skill set to talk deep about this technology. I think when I think about a company like a Palantir and looking at how they're just getting crushed in the market, all I can sort of think about is there going to be a situation where we give up on machine learning, AI, deep learning, predictive and prescriptive insights or analytics? And look, the reality is, I'm telling you, that doesn't exist. It's not going to happen, okay? There's very quickly coming a future where there are the companies who are leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning at scale and succeeding in leveraging data to deliver insights within context. And there's companies that aren't. And those companies that aren't are going to be gone. And I'm telling you that everyone out there is already having these conversations. The amount of folks who are looking at, being interested in, and trying to figure out what to do from this approach is gathering steam like crazy. And all those challenges we let out earlier in the call are specifically the reasons why we know that this space is only going to grow. The TAM is not companies over 100 billion or companies with 10,000 employees. The TAM, or total addressable market, is literally everyone. If you are in business, you are definitely looking at either business intelligence, analytics, or AI. And it's a journey, right? When I first started in this world way back when at IBM, we used to do this thing called the Analytics Quotient. This is where we would go and talk to executives at companies and understand, where are they along their journey of analytics? And essentially it was like no one. And every year, more and more and more are realizing either I've already started trying, I'm getting ready now, researching, I realize I'm behind and have to move forward. And now in 2022, in this space, the way it's being operated and delivered, you really got to get on board and get it going. I want to bring up one more point is we know that Palantir, as an example, released a certification program recently. These are the kind of steps that build out the ecosystem of professionals and consultants who can actually go and implement, install, and help to run this kind of material for big customers. That's a really important thing. We see this with everyone from Microsoft to Google to Salesforce to IBM. Anyone who's in the AI space is recognizing you have to have certified folks who specialize in your software and can deliver at scale. And the beauty of that is, as that ecosystem of people who are professionals in your product, they want to sell more of your product too, so they get more consulting deals, which then further increase that ability to grow. Now we're looking at that primary, secondary, tertiary market in a totally different way. So I know this is a little bit off my normal path of what I talk about, but I thought it might be interesting to share some insights as to what I'm seeing. And I really want to wrap it up like this. there are really only going to be those who are leveraging data analysis at scale for execution, and those who are saying they're not ready yet because of some random problem. So if you are dealing with a company who has historically been able to get accurate models deployed, have a moat of large scale data sitting in their systems to be processed, this is not to be taken for granted. If you, I, or anyone else go out and try to start an AI company today, I'm not saying you can't do it, of course you can. It's going to be very hard to compete at a platform level with well-capitalized, well-connected major players who are covering both the federal perspective as well as a commercial perspective. And this is why a lot of the new competitors in this space are point solutions. It's people who are looking for niche AI products, right? Like identify music, identify a job, identify, a tire, right? Whatever it is. But again, it's to scale and have the huge deals and long-term contracts and everything else we would expect. You got to think enterprise. You have to think platform. You have to think massive data moat. You have to think the degree of intelligence and statistical relevance that we see within those models and delivery therein too. So way off the beaten track of what I normally do. Hopefully got some value on this. If this is a topic you want me to go deeper on, I am more than happy to do so. If you also work in the space, you watch this video and want to talk, sure, let's do it. So with that, thanks for watching. Hopefully made it to the end. Appreciate everyone. Have a good one. Take it easy.